Merokque by Ari'el, Holland. Chapter 1. He died with his eyes open. It was fitting for a guardian to go that way. Watching, but only this time nothing entering. That night I was the one who closed his eyes, that it was my duty to do so. The child of the guardian had rights to end her mentor's role on this side of life. I remember how the tribe sent him off with a ceremony fit for a chief, and I was there to watch the people wail for their protector, and probably even more for the fact that I could never replace him. I could die trying like my father, but I would always be the situation that shouldn't have happened. Now I remained, as the only child of my dead parents, a female in the line of masculine guardians, a punishment from the gods that will remain that way until a male heir is born and restores protection to the tribes. It was not that I didn't have the powers of my ancestors. It was not that I was incapable of doing this. It was simply the fact that I was a woman, guarding the walls of the tribe. When I was presented to the elders after my mother died, the shaman told the tribe that I would either be their greatest treasure or greatest liability. Considering that my mother's death and my sexuality ended the only thing that stood between our walls and enemy tribes, I was cursed as a product of Zillian, the death god. For those reasons, I was not allowed to join the rest of my female peers in the festivals, in the gathering of crops. I was not taken in by the elders. I was not allowed to join the tribe circle. I was not even allowed to dance during festivals like the rest. In fact, I was already reaching my 22nd year and still unwed. Most girls from my tribe by this age would have been mothers of toddlers, but I had never even received a proposal in my life. All I was allowed to do was sit by my father at the walls of the tribe as he told me story after story of how this world came to be. My beginnings were filled with his summary voice and buffalo's milk until I was old enough to express to him the things that I saw and knew of myself. And my father knew then that although I was a female, I still had the traits of all the guardians before me. As young as I can recall, my ears picked up the slightest noise, my nose the faintest sense, and my eyes remained sharp, regardless of the light. But more than helpful, I was mostly afraid. My father knew this as well. He understood that what I was feeling when the branches snapped underneath a foot from a distance, and I couldn't tell if it was a deer leaping or an enemy advancing. So he trained me, like a son, like a man. I was raised, grappling, hunting, sharpening spears. I wore my hair in a guardian's wolf tail, wearing loincloths and chasing after my father, until the moon decided to break the lie. I was not a man. I was born a daughter. My body forced me to reckon with this truth, with blood flowing down my thighs and a stabbing in my belly that I could not control. When I came crying in fear, my father backed away at that moment, and so did my senses. For an entire week, I was as feeble and unknowing as the rest of my peers. I felt what it meant to be unprotected, unsure, and in pain. But after he collected himself, he brought me by the hand to a limestone cavern, an unknown sanctuary, with yellow smoothened walls puckered with the oldest carvings I had ever seen in my life, of the tales that he had told me of all these years. Far inside was a pool of water, luminescent and gurgling. It was a warm spring. The place was decorated with furniture as well, a little cot with a bright moss mattress and a beautiful blanket that looked like a piece of the sky. Then an old tree stump as a table with an earthen pot atop. Near the opening of the cave was a prepared fireplace that could keep the room warm and also heat up simple meals. He told me that he had prepared this place for me when the moon decided to grant me the gift of childbirth. I was to remain there for the week to rest, recover, and remain untouched by the rest of the world. There were even cotton strips that were thick and heavy and meant for these weeks, and I didn't know how to thank him enough, even though he left me there. But I was bitter at the moon. As I laid on that moss mattress, staring up at the opening of the cave that showed the glistening night, I couldn't enjoy it the way I did when my eyes could make out the shapes of each star. The pockmarked moon was no longer the same. I could spot the bats that fluttered in their whimsical patterns, but it was all a blur. All I could tell was that there were bright dots and a swollen orb that laughed at my misery. That first week was frightening. I wondered, as the pain increased and the blood soaked through the strips, if I would remain here like this till I had a child. But there were moments that I wished to be dead, to leave all of this because I wasn't wanted anyway. But my father's steely eyes reminded me that I was still needed. He took me by the hand and told me every day that I was his treasure. That's why he named me Merokque. And I remember just before he died, he told me that even if the tribe didn't want me, they'll understand soon that they need me. End of chapter 1.